Hello and welcome back to the channel. A quick one today, I think. I'm going to try and keep this to less than half an hour, if I can manage. I'm doing Kelly Baer's tag 54321 Tarot. I feel like that should be sung rather than said. It's got a nice ring to it, a kind of jingle kind of sound to it. Kelly Baer is one of my favourite tarot tubers, and she has initiated a brilliant tarot tag that's doing the rounds at the moment, 54321 Tarot, and it's really clever because it's a brilliant way of getting to know each other and getting to know each other's interests in the realm of tarot, because what we're being asked to do is to select and tell people about 5 tarot decks, 4 tarot books, 3 tarot spreads, 2 tarot habits that we stick to, and 1 tarot tip. And Kelly has said that we can deviate from that slightly. We can use decks other than tarot, but the basic principle is that we're sharing our interest in tarot through those artifacts that we're sharing, 54321. So I'm just going to get stuck in with my 5 decks, and Kelly explains that we don't have to pick our 5 favourite decks. We can pick 5 decks that are of a particular theme. My theme is my 5 most recently purchased decks, not all of which I've actually explored yet in detail. So I'm not going to go into a review of these decks in this video because I don't know enough about them to be able to do that. But I am going to show you the decks, explain why I got them and why I'm interested in them, and tell you what I know about them so far. So the first one I want to share with you is this one, Sefirot, the Spheres of Heaven Tarot, which actually is the most recent deck that I got. And let me just read a little bit to you from the booklet that comes with the deck, because it's got a really interesting provenance, this deck. Well, first of all, on the back of the deck it says, drawing from the history of tarot, from Marseille and Rider-Waite-Smith to Zabala and esoteric lore, this deck explores the deep roots of tarot's archetypes, symbolism and evolution, featuring diverse representation and 3 unique lovers cards for readers to choose from. So there are 80 cards in this deck. Journey to the distant shores of the mystical isle of Dioscorea and experience the bold, gilded lines that breathe glittering life into the major arcana and court cards of this deck, while the minor arcana's elegant pip style is rich with numerical mysticism. So this apparently is a deck that kind of synthesizes different traditions, which is kind of interesting, isn't it? So the introductory booklet says in it, the cards before you have a curious history. They were conceived by a game designer. There are 4 people who are involved in this, creating this deck: Elliot Baum, George Hobmeier, Viv Tanner and James Patton. I think Elliot is the Elliot and Viv are the artist duo located in Austria. James Patton is an indie game developer born in the UK but living in Vienna, and George Hobmeier is a writer and game designer from the Eastern Alps. And the history of the deck is that the cards they have a curious history. They were conceived by a game designer attempting to tease stories from tarot cards by means of solitaire game mechanics. I'm not very up on games and things like that, so some of this is not in my realm of understanding, but I'm fascinated that it started life as a game. And it says, what started as a little card tinkering and divination ballooned into a much larger journey, culminating in the creation of this deck. Sefirot, in its current form, was originally conceived as a board game with tarot cards for 1 or 2 players that would involve some divinatory aspects. It's played on a 2-sided game board, one side of which features a tree of life, a diagram used in various mystical traditions. And that's where the Kabbalistic influence comes in. And then they go on to say they invented their own world, this Dioscorea, which is where the characters in this deck are set, if you like. And it says our intention was to create a new sort of tarot rather than one that just reiterated the wisdom of the Rider-Waite-Smith deck, which dominates tarot iconography and symbolism. Instead, we decided to establish a new architecture of concepts through a synthesis of various sources, such as the writings of Levi, Jodorowsky, and Case. That'll be Paul Foster Case. We did not ignore the propositions of Smith and Waite, of course, but wove them into this new fabric of meaning as well. So if you're interested in the history of tarot, if you're interested in different tarot systems, if you're interested in how they fit or don't fit together, I think you'll find this deck rather interesting. That is the back, and I'll just show you a few of the cards before we move on to the next one. That's the full. I'm not very sure how well this is going to focus. Very nice artwork, I have to say. Oh, that's the Magician. And actually, let me just go. I love the Empress. There's real diversity in the images of this deck as well, which is one of the things that attracted me to it. And the Lovers card is a case in point because there are 3 variations of it, which account for different sexualities and genders. So there is one version of the Lovers card. There is another version of the Lovers card. And there is a third version of the Lovers card. So some nudity in the deck. If that's an issue for you, then it might not be the deck for you. Not an issue for me. My favourite card always is the Tarot. It's my birth card, and I love the Chariot. What am I talking about? The Chariot, which is what I love about this one is you're seeing the Chariot from a different angle than usual. So rather than head on, we're seeing the Chariot coming diagonally out of the card at us. Lots of interesting motion there. Just to give you an idea of the pip cards. Here we have the wands. They are true pip cards, but rather than just a number of wands stuck together, they have different kind of numerical patterns which I think relate to the concept that's trying to be described. And here are an example of the court cards. So nice illustrations, interesting concept. I'm fascinated to see how it all kind of fits together. What I have noticed, if I can find it, is just looking at the card that we would normally see as Judgment. In this deck it is called the Gate, and it's very clear on this card in particular that we get the Hebrew letters that are associated Kabbalistically with the major arcana. So a great way of diving into some of the esoteric symbolism of tarot and seeing if you can spot some of the influences from other systems that you might be familiar with. So that is the Spheres of Heaven tarot, and I'm looking forward to exploring that one further. Number 2 is a deck that I got because I wanted something a bit more minimalist than I've had recently and than I usually use, and that is the Wanderer's Tarot. And many of you of course will have this. It's by Casey Zabala, and lovely, just a straightforward cover at the back. This comes in at least two editions, one of which is dark with light lettering, and this is the one with light with dark lettering and images. There's a full, quite a contrast to the previous deck. Traditional imagery, but also some non-traditional imagery, very abstract in some regards. Look at this Empress, wonderful. And let's zip forward to the Chariot. What does the Chariot look like in this one? Wow, powerful Chariot image with an actual physical heart organ in the Chariot. Looking at, oh sorry, I can't resist, the Hermit. Look at the Hermit. Oh, love it. So, looking ahead to, oops, I'm going to end up with tarot cards all around my feet from various decks by the time I finish this video. Again, a rather pippish deck. 2 and 3 of feathers. 4, 5 of feathers. And then looking forward to the court cards. The Philosopher of feathers, the Goddess of feathers, the Prophet of feathers. Lots of cards just landed on the floor. And the Wanderer of feathers. So you get a sense of the way that Casey Zabala has handled the courts in this deck. Rather unusual. Let me put this deck away before I spill any more of the cards on myself. And incidentally, I am going to cheat a little bit, Kelly, because I know we're only doing 5 decks, but I have to let you know, or let people watching know, that I found my way to this tarot, which I'd been aware of, but I hadn't really, really particularly wanted to get. It wasn't, for some reason, it wasn't something that initially attracted me. Then I changed my mind when I got my hands on another deck that Casey Zabala did called the Wyrd Sisters Oracle, which, as the name suggests, is an oracle deck, but it's an oracle deck that leads one to various spells. So you select a card and you'll get a magical spell. That's a sigil for healing, spell for ending. So you select the card and spell for silence. Then you look in the booklet and it gives you an indication of a spell or a ritual you can conduct or that you can adapt for yourself, and that's a wonderful way of using that oracle. So that's what led me to the Wanderer's Tarot, and I love them both very much. Have a sip of coffee. Black cat mug. Now the next 2 decks actually come as a pair, and I got these because, and I'll say more about this I think on the channel at some point, I have become interested in some of the Kabbalistic magic philosophies that are available to us, and one of them that is very interesting to explore is working with the 72 angels of the Kabbalah, sometimes known as the angels of the Shem HaMephorash. And these angels are angels that are representations of the 72 names of God in Kabbalistic tradition. And this deck by Travis McHenry pulls together these different angels. Let me just pull the curtain, otherwise I'm going to be blinded, and so are you. So yes, the Angel Tarot by Travis McHenry, and this deck, as you might expect, has cards for each of the 72 angels, which are related to the tarot. What I haven't delved into yet is to what extent the relationships between the cards and the tarot cards are known within Kabbalistic or mystical tradition, and to what extent they have been determined by Travis McHenry, and I'm fascinated to find out more. But here's an example of the cards. Here we have the Archangel, or Archangel, I can never say that correctly, Archangel Michael, and here he is, or they are representing the Chariot, and the card includes details of the name of the angel, what the angel's name means. This one is who is like God. That's what Michael means in Hebrew. The Hebrew version of Michael means, and the qualities associated with the particular angel are at the bottom there. In Michael's case, it's perseverance, success in conflict, and overcoming adversity. And then you also have 2 angelic seals at the bottom of the card, which say a bit more about how that angel might be worked with. And so Michael represents the chariot. We have Raphael representing the wheel of fortune, Gabriel representing the moon, and so on and so forth. Some well-known names of angels, and then angels that aren't quite so well known probably to those of us who are not as well versed in Kabbalistic lore, like Sihia, God who took evil, the Six of Wands. And then we have other angels like Hamia, Queen of Swords, God the hope of all the earth. So really interesting to, I'm sorry this is so dark, really interesting to consider how these cards could be used both for divination within the tarot sense, and also magically, if you were actually working with these angelic forces in a magical, ceremonial magic tradition. So that's one deck. The deck that goes alongside it could probably be more accurately described as the Demon Tarot, but it's called the Occult Tarot, presumably to not put people off buying it. But the reason I say that it could be called the Demon Tarot is it effectively is the equivalent of the Angel Tarot, but with the I think it's the same number of demons. I'm not entirely sure. But on the back it says, author and occultist Travis McHenry reveals the secret demons of the 17th century and conjures their powers into this unique 78 divination card set. The first tarot deck to faithfully adhere to the Solomonic principles of demon conjuration, the Occult Tarot draws on demons, symbols and sigils from ancient magical grimoires, including Archidoxis Magica and the Key of Solomon. And the idea, the principle behind this, many of you will know this if you work with these forces, is that you are, in ceremonial magic terms, you conjure the demons in order to constrain and deal with them. I think angel work and demon work, in my perspective, is really about dealing with parts of ourselves. I don't mean our small egoic selves, I mean our big vast self that is connected to everything, and the best representations of ourselves and also the most problematic representations of ourselves can be projected onto these angelic and demonic qualities. I'm not being disrespectful in saying this. I'm not saying that one shouldn't work on the basis that they are actual separate entities and be respectful and treat them as such, but I'm saying that the reason it's worthwhile thinking about working with them is it's a way of moving forward as ourselves, as human beings. Anyway, I'm babbling now. So similar format to these cards, you have the relevant demon on them. There we have Baphomet, the magician, and the quality that you can work with Baphomet is gives health and financial prosperity and connects one safely with the divine. If we go to the moon, we have Beelzebub. Some of these names will be familiar to you. Makes manifest the apparitions of demons, sets demons upon men to destroy them with vices, and you get the sigils at the bottom there as well. Some demons like Baphomet, Beelzebub, Lucifer, who represents death, Moloch, who represents the devil, will probably be known to most of us. Then we get demons that aren't quite so well known, representing the Queen of Cups. We have Phoenix, and what we have here is Phoenix teaches all sciences and performs wonderful poetry, follows all requests with excellence. Demons all over the floor. We have Vipar for the Eight of Cups. Fascinating image. And it says here, guide of the waters, can make storms and rough seas. Storm Agnes is on the way, so I think Vipar must be working on that. Causes men... Oh, I'm not going to read that because that's a bit horrible. Moving swiftly on. So really I got this because I wanted to have something to compare the Occult Tarot and the Angelic Tarot. So there we have both of them. And I'm going to carefully maneuver myself because I have demons all over the floor and I do not want to accidentally step on a demon at this particular point in proceedings. I don't think that would be wise. Okay, so how many decks is that? One, that's 4, so I've got one more to do. the final deck I want to tell you about. How are we doing for time? I'm never going to get this done in half an hour, but I'll try. Perfect for spooky season. Tarot of the Sorceress, a witch's wheel of the year. And I got this because, well, why wouldn't I? It's called Tarot of the Sorceress, and it says, discover concealed oracle messages and bring to light your hidden depths with the Tarot of the Sorceress. Inspired by pagan spirituality, this deck revolves around the seasonal festivals, Sabbats, and solar events that comprise the Wheel of the Year, and rituals encompassing the 4 elements of air, water, fire, and earth. And I got this really because I am interested in doing more work with the Wheel of the Year, and so it just felt like it made sense to do that. Those are the backs of the cards. Very nice. And really lovely images. That's the star. This image is on the front of the box. I'm trying to get light without reflecting it. There we are. There's a star. The 2 of air with the elemental symbols of air. There. There's the magician. One of my favourites is the foal, which is a witch on a broomstick flying off into outer space. So really a lovely deck. Let me see if I can find you a court card. So that you can get a sense of what it looked like. Oh, the obligatory chariot, a very unusual chariot card. And let me just have a look. Let me have a look. So 8, 9, yeah, there we are. Queen of Air. So personalised court cards. King of Air. Talking of angels. Very interesting. So those are my 5 decks, and probably what I will do is once I have explored them a bit further, I will review them on my channel and let you know a little bit more about how they are working out for me. Okay, so those are my 5 decks. Let me have another sip of coffee. And let's see if I can get a little bit more light on the situation without blinding myself. That's probably a bit better. So my 4 books. I'm going to run through these quite quickly because you can find out more about them online, but I will say briefly what they are, who they're by, and why I got them. So the first one, The Tarot, History, Mystery and Lore by Cynthia Giles. I love this book because it's not a book about tarot history, it's not a book about tarot meanings, it's not a book about tarot spreads, it's a little bit of everything. So it has got a section on the history of tarot, where it comes from, various interpretations of the history, the different phases of tarot lore, so when it was historically invented as a game, through the esoteric tradition, into the modern world of tarot, how it's transformed and been used in different ways at different times. Then we have a section on the mystery behind tarot, so the occult tradition and why so much occult philosophy has been projected onto the cards and why that is, how that works. Speculations about how tarot might work. Also a chapter on tarot in the light of science, and it has a section called quantum exercises for tarot readers, which are fascinating. There are ways of exploring tarot and seeing how it might work for you. And then at the end, in lore, the section lore, it has a sampling of tarot decks and some recommended tarot books and recommended tarot ideas for working with the cards. So it's really a fascinating book. And just to give you an idea, there's stuff in there about alchemical symbolism, you know, looking at how the tarot links to the chakra system, all kinds of things, shamanic cave paintings and so on, and how tarot connects to some of that. Really, really interesting. And there's a follow-up book which I think is called something like, I don't know if it's mentioned here. So this is History, Mystery and Lore. There's something like Magic, something and more. I can't remember, but by Cynthia Giles, also highly recommended. Next one, similar This is actually an anthology of tarot essays edited by James Wanless, who pulled together the Voyager and created the Voyager tarot, and Arrien, who another tarot luminary. And I actually spoke about this book in a video I did some years ago called Midwinter Musings, and I spoke about the fact that the book had lots of interesting information about it, including information about some studies around the use of tarot and how tarot might work and what can be done to make a tarot reading more effective. And I won't go into great detail around that here, but suffice to say that I'm not saying that these studies are, definitive or were large scale enough to be seen as proof, but there was strong indications about the way one approaches a tarot reading can have an effect on its efficacy and accuracy. So going into a meditative state, one of the experiments found that those who did that got much more accurate, appropriate, on-point readings. And I speak about that in more detail in that video, so I'll link it somewhere around here so that you can explore it. But there's, a whole set of different essays in here. There's an essay on synchronicity, divination and psi. There's an essay on transpersonal approach to symbolic therapy. There's astrological essays. There is looking at tarot through the lens of psychology. There's information about archetypes, psychodynamic effects of tarot symbolism, dance and tarot, various different things. And there are essays by people whose names you'll recognise, like Mary Greer, and of course the authors, the editors, James Wanless and Arrien. So a really, really interesting book and well worth dipping into. So I highly recommend that one. Then if you are looking for an introductory book to tarot, and one that if you're new to tarot and would be useful for you want to learn more about tarot, then I would go for Choice Centered Tarot by Gail Fairfield. And the reason for that is simply that it's so straightforward, so simple. It goes down to real basics around things like the structure of a tarot deck, and most importantly the way that the development of number in the tarot is significant and how it relates to the meanings of the suits. So it takes you through that step by step, gives you a whole section on how to design a tarot spread and layout, what the process of reading is about, and various different ways to use the cards. So really, really an excellent, straightforward book. My friend James Wells put me onto this, and he describes this as his tarot Bible, and that is good enough for me. James is a marvellous tarot reader from Canada. My final book, number 4, is Rachel Pollack's Tarot Wisdom, and the reason I'm sharing this one is this is the follow-up to Rachel's. It came several years later, but it's the follow-up to her classic 78 Degrees of Wisdom. And we lost Rachel earlier this year, sadly, but she leaves us this marvellous legacy of tarot books, and this is one of my favourites by her. She described it as a book that pulls together all the things she learned about tarot since writing 78 Degrees of Wisdom, which makes it sound as though it might be hyper advanced and very inaccessible. Well, it is advanced, but it's also very accessible. And what I love about it is she goes through each of the, particularly the major cards, in detail, and then at the end of each chapter on the majors, and you get lots of illustrations of different decks for each of the cards. And then at the end of each chapter for the majors, there is a spread. She's designed and shares a spread for doing a reading. So there's a full reading, and that's true of all of the different majors. And then there's a reading for each of the different suits as well, and court cards and so on. So really an excellent book if you want to go. If you got just this and read them, you would have a phenomenal grounding in tarot. So those are my 4 books. I think we're going to be more than half an hour, but I'll see if I can get through this fairly quickly. 3 spreads, my favourite 3 spreads. I'm going to be a bit cheeky here, and I'm going to share with you 3 spreads that I've designed. And Two of them I've done videos on where I actually outline the spread and also do a reading, so you'll be able to dive into these in a bit more detail. Now, I'm very high tech when it comes to sharing spreads. No AI generated imagery from me. I have just written them onto my pad, and if I hold them up to the camera, you can pause if you want to do this spread or carry out a reading with this spread for yourself. So this one, the first one is the resilience spread. So let me, hang on, let me try and do this without, there we are. Pause now, take a screenshot if you want to do it. That's a resilience spread. And so basically you choose a significator and then you choose 8 cards, but you choose 7 cards, select 7 cards in the normal way. One of them is the energy or obstacle you're facing. The second one is about looking at what you need to accept or attract in order to overcome that obstacle. The third one is what you need to change and release in order to overcome the obstacle. Number 4 is where do you need to focus in order to move forward. And in this you would do this spread, by the way, it's a resilience spread. So you do it when you're feeling kind of beleaguered, when you're feeling put upon by life. So number 4 is where do you need to focus. Number 5 is about looking at what helps you to show up in the face of this adversity. Number 6 is about what hidden blocks you're facing, and number 7 is about what hidden strength you have within you. And then number 8, you choose an ally card. It can either be from the same deck or from an oracle deck, and you can do that either by picking the card from the bottom of the pile, like a hidden card, or you can select one of your own choice, face up, a card that you want to ally with you. That is the resilience spread, and I'll put a link around here where you can see the video on that in more detail. Then we have the self-compassion spread. Again, let's no, hang on. Right. Pause here. Take a screenshot if you want to do this spread for yourself. Okay, so the self-compassion spread. Again, there are 8 cards. The first card, you don't need a significator for this if you don't want one. The first card is looking at where do I unfairly judge myself. The second one, how can I be kinder to myself or to other people. The third card is where am I isolated or isolating myself. The fourth is where may I find support when I need more compassion, self-compassion in my life. Number 5 is where am I over-attached maybe to a particular outcome that's keeping me back or keeping me feeling very self-critical. Number 6 is how may I build mindfulness to help me past this and to cultivate more self-compassion. And then the 2 ally cards at the end are interesting. Number 7, you add up all the numbers of the cards that you've selected and you reduce them down to get to an ally card within the major arcana of your deck. That's your first ally card, which is selected for you by the cards that have come up in the reading. And then the second one, number 8, is an ally card, again like the last one, last spread, where you choose the ally card for yourself and you select it from any deck of your choice. That's the self-compassion spread. So my third one is one that I actually just very recently developed, and it's called the coaching action spread. And what you do with this one is you focus in on a desire, something you want to achieve, that you want to move forward with in your life, and you start off by selecting a card face up to represent the achievement of that desire. So you're going through the deck, looking at the cards and picking the one that represents the desire. Then in the normal way you select the cards to tell you a bit about what's inhibiting you from moving forward with that. That's card number 2. Number 3, I always find it's difficult to do in mirror image. Number 3 is looking at, it's a card you select and it looks at what potential is there if you act. If you were to act on this desire, what potential is open to you? And number 4, what might be the result of not acting, of inaction? By the way, with all of these, you can select one card, or you might want to select 2 or even 3 cards in order to do little mini 2 or 3 card readings in these places. It's entirely up to you. But number 4, place number 4 is what is the result of inaction. And then number 5, you select again in the normal way, you select a card face down which tells you about what suggested decision you need to make. In other words, you look at the card and you decide what what is this suggesting to me I might need to do and decide. And again, you can select more than one card. You can pull clarifying card if you want to. And as always, you can always select an ally card. You can do that by selecting the card that's at the bottom of the pile after you've done the reading. That's kind of like the hidden card. Or you can select an ally card from any deck just to represent a helper that can help you move forward. Okay, so those are my actual things to show you. What I now have to do is tell you about 2 tarot habits that I commonly demonstrate in my work. Well, 2 things here that I habitually do in relation to tarot. One, I make a point of not reading every day. So I know that very often especially when you're learning tarot, you're encouraged to read every day, and there's nothing wrong with that if that's what you want to do. I have found, and possibly because I'm more experienced now and have been reading tarot for so long, that if I read every day or try to read every day, in a sense it almost devalues the readings for me. And so I find that it's better for me to be more discerning and sparing in my readings. So I don't read just to see what the tarot might have to say about some fairly inconsequential thing. I tend to do readings that are much more directed towards a specific issue or a specific choice I want to make or a specific thing I want to move forward with. It's one of the reasons that a lot of my tarot work is focused on coaching, as that last spread suggests. So that's the first one. I don't read every day. The second habit I commonly employ is I tend not to read freestyle, and by that I mean I do tend to read a spread, but more importantly I form a question when I'm doing a reading. So I take some time to really form a clearly worded, fairly detailed, fairly precise question, so that when I do the reading I'm interpreting the cards that come up in the context of that question. For me, context is everything in a tarot reading, and we can flitter around like butterflies if we're not careful and we just pull the cards randomly. Not that there's anything wrong with that. It can be fun to do that, but I like my readings to be focused and precise, so I tend to use a spread and I form a good question. So that's kind of 2 habits in one there. The most important being forming a solid question before asking the cards. And then number 1, or the final one, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, I have to give you 1 tarot tip. So my 1 tarot tip, and this is really for those of you who are entirely new to tarot or who are thinking of dipping your toes into tarot. Start simply. Start simply. Tarot can be really overwhelming. There are so many decks, there are so many systems, there's so much lore, there's so much history, there's so much mysticism and mystery associated with tarot. It can be very overwhelming, although very interesting, but it can be very overwhelming to a newcomer. So if you're new, and even if you're experienced, I think it's a good thing to simplify. So my number 1 tip would be start simply. And I actually have 11 other tips which I've done in my most recent video, which again I'll link around here, it's called 12 tips for learning tarot. So we're a little bit over the half hour, I think, but not too much. So I'll stop there. That is my 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 tarot. Thank you very much, Kelly, for putting this together. It's been a wonderful tag. I hope you found this interesting and useful. I'm loving seeing everyone else's tags. I hope many more of you will do it, because it's a great way of sharing and learning and connecting with each other. So thank you all. I'll see you again very soon.